Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Good Times Hour. All right, B, take it away.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls around the world, please welcome to the tea our next special guest. He's the original man of Frisbee fame whose name is woven into the history of the game. He's the giant upon whose shoulders the world now stands. 50 years on, and he still has the power in his hands and a twinkle in his smile a mile wide. He's the light Harley rider looking to spread the crimson tide wider day and night. He rolls tide and always has an extra glide in his stroll, like a preacher of the good word, and like a bird in flight, the arc of the disc is always right and preferred. He's the original rebel from Butler High, the man who has kissed the sky with the flight of a disc and a green and gold yell. His motto, walk tall and carry a quick stick, large or small. He's so professional, even his footprints in the fabric of disc golf are orthotically correct and have been known to alleviate pain and discomfort. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and welcome to the tee from Huntsville, Alabama, Lavone Wolfe.
Hey, Lavone, how are you?
What an intro.
Right on. That's kind of our twist, one of our little twists that we have brought to this whole podcast game. But
yeah, you did some digging for that.
I like to do the research, that's for sure. Yeah. And thanks to the internet, it's so much easier to do research. And especially with someone with a deep footprint like yourself.
Yeah, this is definitely a deep dive on this one tonight for sure. I mean, I've looked over both bits of information, and we got a lot to get to. So let's start with the framework. Your hometown is Huntsville, Alabama. Though, when it says hometown, did you grow up there? Were you born there, or?
Wasn't born here. I was born in Birmingham. My dad was a Baptist preacher. We moved around a bit and moved to Huntsville in December 1961, when Huntsville was just a little small cotton town, basically. And Werner von Braun was here and started building rockets, and Huntsville took off from there.
So you've seen all of that growth then. All right. So you have a master's in organization and management. You're the owner of Foot Care Plus SAS shoes since 1999. I didn't realize you were still doing that.
Well, I closed the shoe store about 4 or 5 years ago. I just got so busy with End Zone and building courses, I didn't have the time. I also had a disc golf shop in there for 22 years and closed that. I still do orthotics. It's by appointment only. But the disc golf side of my life has overtaken that. I really enjoy doing the orthotics, but my main focus now is designing and installing courses and coming up with a few other innovations for the sport.
Nice.
Right on. All right. So speaking of which, you're the founder and the owner of End Zone and the inventor of the Quick Stick, the industry leader in disc retrieval. And although you're no longer affiliated whatsoever with the company, you were also one of the founders of Prodigy Discs.
Right.
So your disc golf resume, just a real quick rundown, because we're going to do some deeper dives into a lot of this here a little later in the show. You've been a member of the PDGA since '79. You were the 1989 Bob West Memorial Sportsmanship Award winner. You were the founder of the Disc Golf Hall of Fame in '93, and you were an inductee in '94. This is a good point to pause. So let's talk about those first few things a little bit there. You told us earlier when we were talking before the show that you got your number in 1979 for the big event at the Rose Bowl. Is that correct?
It is. Actually, it wasn't a Rose Bowl. It was a $50,000 tournament that Ed ran, the Whammo Invitational at Huntington Beach.
Oh, all right. So that was even before that big Rose Bowl event.
Yeah. The quick story on that is Tom Monroe is who I met that started me in disc golf, and he was trying to get me to join the PGA. He said, "Hey, we need to send our money in," and I was a poor student, didn't have any money. He kept hounding me for a couple of weeks or longer than that, and I said, "Tom, go ahead and send yours in. I don't have any money." And so he sent it in and got 033 and been mad at me for decades because he could have been a single digit and says that we could have both been single digits. Who knows if that's really true, but that's been what we've repeated for years. But
well, that's one thing that we found out. One of the recurring themes on pretty much every show is that everybody's got a story like that. And, you know, there's some good ones coming up that I've just heard recently on my recent travels. And I'm not going to spill the beans on those yet, but that's one of those things, like, we're just going to go ahead and make that a category. Okay, give us the reason why you didn't get your number when you thought you should have, or something along that line.
Well, you know, I don't think anybody realized the significance of it. There was no way of knowing. And, you know, if we did, I would certainly have joined sooner than 1979. But, you know, we were working with Ed when I say we, Tom and I, actually in the last few days have been going through letters. I found a number of letters from Tom, from Ed, from myself, and I made sure that I kept those. Some pretty interesting things that now I'm disseminating throughout the country, getting them some of the things that's important to people in different areas like Oak Grove, relative to the founding of their course. But
well, you know, something that's cool about Oak Grove, we had Roger, I'm sure you know Roger Kanzler. Well, his dad worked for the Parks Department, and he was involved with approving that course.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I think his name may have been in one of the newspaper articles. I had a conversation this morning with Joe Orsino, asking Joe, where can I send these newspaper articles to? So I'm going to send them to Joe.
Nice.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's really cool. So, no, we're near done with the framework yet. Well, so we talked about your membership in the beginning there, but what led to you getting the Bob West Sportsmanship Award? I mean, I can imagine, but
I don't know. I mean, that was such an honor and a shock. And I will tell people, if you could look around my office right now, when you walk in the door, you see I've got a little steel sculpture it's disc golf, and I got some pictures behind me. But the only trophy, the only thing that I display is my Bob West Sportsmanship Award. It's on right inside my door here against the wall, because that is the most meaningful and the most honorable thing that I've ever received in my life. I cherish that more than I do any tournament that I ever won, and including my Hall of Fame plaque.
Well,
Wow.
That's totally understandable. I mean, that's not just recognition from the entire group. It's like, hey, you know what? You know how to act. And that's an endorsement of you and your character from the entire group. And that's really amazing. And so, all right, we're not even going to talk about the Hall of Fame because you already said you traded in for that. So, well, but really, honestly, what led you to go ahead and push to found the Hall of Fame? Well, was it simply the fact that nothing had been done like that yet?
I kept everything from the very beginning because I was just so infatuated with the Frisbee and the flying disc. Immediately, I joined the IFA in those days, and I just kept all the documentation, all the flyers. And by 1993, I mean, we had a number of years behind us. And I know that a lot of people that were important to me, they were no longer playing, they were retired. And I told Tom, I said, I just don't want these people to be forgotten. And so that was kind of a surprise that I launched at the players meeting, the opening ceremonies for the 93 Hall of Fame. And I think everybody, except for maybe one, Dan Mangone, was not here. Most of them were in town when we inducted them in that inaugural class. I just wanted to do something to make sure that we were going to preserve our history and not forget them. And it was also at that World Championship when, you know, Ed was totally surprised. He was pleased and totally surprised. And I shared in a conversation with Ed, I said, Ed, you know, I've kept everything. And one day I want to open up a museum. And he told me then, he said, Lavone, if you'll promise me that you do that, I'm going to give you my prototype pole hole. And when I die, I have my family and the state give you all of my archives and memorabilia if you'll keep your promise. I said, I promise. And so we finally, I think it was in 2001, when we put the Hall of Fame in the Ed Hedrick Memorial Museum in Augusta. And he gave me that prototype pole hole, kept it right here in town in my attic for years. And I would pull it out and take it to bigger tournaments and get a hotel suite and set up little displays with memorabilia, disc, you know, going back through the ages, and just have a little show and tell. It was always a fun thing to do, especially at Worlds.
That is a good thing to do at Worlds, for sure. For sure. So you were a certified master disc golf course designer since 2008, and you're a global master series ranked number 123. What did you have to do to get certified master disc golf course designer?
I don't know. I guess I presented, the courses, what I'd done, and Chuck Kennedy, he's been aware of my design work for years, and he's got some parameters, I guess, that he uses on how you study courses with scoring differential and the shot shape and distances and understanding all the elements that we use in course design. And from my conversations, interviews with him, he decided that I was a master course designer. I'm working on all of the courses that I've designed did not get installed, but I'm somewhere right now, I'm approaching 70 courses, and I will probably do in this next year at least another 12, maybe 15 courses.
Oh, that's amazing.
That's amazing, man.
It's busy.
It should be noted that you are one of only 10 people who have been certified as a master disc golf course designer in the world. So you're in rarefied air up there with the elite company.
It's what I love to do. I like to keep courses relevant to today's players. It's been a long time, I guess, since I've designed them for me to throw and play. But fortunately, I've got people here in Huntsville that work with me and for me that can throw the shots. If I can get my rotator cuff fixed, I'd like to get back where I can throw those shots.
Yeah, that's a pretty well, and that's definitely something we can talk about more a little bit later. But the consideration of how do you put together a course that's going to make everybody happy? That's a really difficult question to answer right now, for sure.
Well, number one, like I said a moment ago, I use all the elements, all the design elements, from false fronts, texture, terrain, prevailing wind, everything in consideration. And I know how to do that, but it's fairness, it's distance, it's scoring diversity, it's risk reward. I design courses always. One of my sayings is I design courses to appeal to the three sins of disc golf, and that's pride, ego, and now I forgot, in greed. Pride, ego, and greed. And so, and I have pretty much most of the time, a defined preferred shot that you have to execute on that hole. And players can do that if it wasn't the right shot. I know that it's not going to stick on that green because of the texture or the angle that shot's going to come in. And it just takes a lot of time nowadays to define the greens and place the pins and tees. Even the slight subtle angle changes everything. But I hate courses that you throw a legitimate fairway for the first 400 feet, and then it's just like this. We've had that in a number of worlds, and we still have that on a number of pro tour courses. And I think it's horrible. I think you have to define courses with fairways for legitimate shot shape and skill, not luck.
Yeah, I agree with that. I totally agree with that. I mean,
when you do that, if you max out the property that you're given, I consider the property that's my canvas. What can I do with this property? If it calls for a rec course, I put a rec course on it. If it calls for a pro tour level course, I try to put a pro tour level course on that. And if you do that, generally you keep people happy, even though some people go out and they know, I can't play this course. I don't have those skills. That's fine. I can't go and play, Pebble Beach and ball golf either. But
it's true. Yeah. Well, you can.
For different levels. And
you just have to be realistic about the number that you accept from that,
Exactly. So. And the penalty that you're going to encounter. Recently did a course. It's a little over 11,000 square feet, and it's all about ankle control. And if you don't play a lot of elevation, you may not have that ankle control, even though it looks easy, but it's extremely difficult.
Right on. Well, so I got a little bit of info about your playing career, and I'm just going to run through. This is a few items, but I'm going to run through it all at once, and then we can summarize at the end. But you have 38 MPO victories. You have 27 MPM victories and 3 Grandmaster MPG wins. You have 13 state disc golf champ titles, 9 overall event state titles, 9 top 10 finishes at PDGA Worlds, and 41 years of 41 years of PDGA events between 79 and now. You missed 80, 81, 82, and 2001. And you're also the oldest player to win an open division overall event state championship at 59 years of age in 2023.
2013.
Excuse me, 2013.
Yeah.
So I have a couple of questions. One is, what were you doing in 80, 81, 82, and then 2001? Raising kids?
No, I was playing. We don't have, there's probably a decade of tournaments that we don't have history on the PDGA stats.
Oh, so you did have events in those years as well.
Oh, yeah.
What about 01? Were you away for 01 or injured or something, or?
No.
Okay, well,
I played. I don't know where that is. I've got records for it. I've got records, I think, of every tournament that I've played in. I've got an Excel spreadsheet that I put it on Excel. I kept it for years just on paper.
Wow. Well, that is one of the frustrating
nobody
things
wants
when you
to
do
see
the
that
research.
for me, so I stopped that a long time ago.
Well, you know what? It's not so much going back and look, oh, well, I won this tournament or finished whatever. I make little notes. It's the memories of those tournaments, good or bad. And some of my favorite stories aren't about the wins. I mean, one of my favorite stories I can tell you when you wanted to hear it, but it's about the loss.
All right.
And I think I actually posted something about it the other day. Gannon Burr won the Mid-America Open. Oh no, he had a
splash out to take second.
Splash out. Well, in 1985, at the Mid-America in Columbia, we didn't call our majors then, but it really was. We had so very few tournaments, and when we had a big tournament like that, everybody came from all over the country to go to it. Well, I opened up that tournament with a 39. I shot a 39 on Albert Oakland Park, and I think that held as a course record for years.
I think it still does, but maybe not.
Well, I was cruising through the tournament, and going into the last round, I had a 10-stroke lead and lost. Because in those days, I ate Snickers candy bars and drank Cokes between rounds, didn't know a thing about nutrition. And out there in that heat and humidity, which is pretty much like what they played in the other day, I started getting cramps so bad, I was having to pry my fingers open to put a disc in it and try to throw it, and I could not. And Slate Paul from Dayton, Ohio, came from 10 strokes back to beat me in that last round. But it was a lesson learned, and little stories like that are the things that I remember.
Well, and that's one of the things that's that Paul and I have cemented our friendship on is creating those stories, just the two of us and whoever else was around. Because I mean, man, we've been in so many different situations, and hey, neither one of us are great players, but we're great fun to play with.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, that's another reason why we started the show is that, I mean, I like the history is definitely important without a doubt, but there's so many just epic classic stories, that just kind of happened because there was 3 or 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 of us in the same spot with a little bit of idle time on our hands, and I mean, there's so many different cool things that we've been been able to be a part of.
I'll give you an idea for maybe a future show sometime. I've kept a list of it through the years and years, is things seen on a disc golf course. And oh my gosh, the things I've seen over the decades are just crazy. And that'd be a fun show.
That would be fun. That might be a December show, like end of the year show.
Yeah.
Definitely. So the final thing on your framework I'm going to throw out there, which is I think it's really cool and relevant at this point too right now, is that you're the coach of the UAH disc golf team and you teach disc golf at the university, and that whole collegiate disc golf scene is just blowing up.
Well, I'm not actually teaching a class. I have in the past, and Tom Monroe, he taught classes there for years as well, and at other colleges too. But when we have a group that is interested, I do my best to try to work with them. It's a team really hasn't really worked out this year, but it's been sporadic. But I've taken a number of teams to the collegiate championships, and that's been extremely rewarding. We won it one year. I say we won it. We had a scorecard error that cost us a championship in the last round.
Oh, that's too bad.
But that's still a lot of fun, and especially if we could push it more. One of the most fun times was when Fehlberg had a team and Greenwell had a team, and so I'm battling these guys on their teams, and so if you can't be on the course, that's the next best thing.
Nice.
That's pretty neat. That's really cool.
Yeah. So let's take a pause here for a second and take it back to the very beginning. Let's talk to you about your origin story, because you've been not very shy about telling the world, and obviously the Johnny Appleseed of disc golf, if not just of the South, Tom Monroe. You met him when he was you're both students at the University of Northern Alabama. You're doing your Bachelor's of Science there, and he had been studying there and then left and then came back.
Right.
And
he was in grad school.
Oh, okay. So what were the circumstances how you entered the Frisbee world? Was he playing in the quad one day and you just walked by?
No, it was actually in the gym. I grew up playing all kinds of sports, but primarily just little short boy. I was a basketball player. I loved playing basketball and played almost every day. And one night after dinner, I walked across from the gym to the gym from my dorm, and I always went upstairs to play, try to get a pickup round in. When I walked up the stairs, the first thing I saw in a little area were Tom Monroe and Ken Westerfield, both now Hall of Famers, and they were throwing a Frisbee. Actually, I've got a Frisbee sitting over here that's just like the one that they were throwing, and I think Ken had brought that down, and it was a disc that he had made out of Canada, and he was touring around doing freestyle shows. And I sat on my basketball and never played. And they saw me just watching. It was just those two and me in that area of the gym. And finally, they asked me, he said, you want to throw? And I said, yeah. And so I jumped up, started throwing. I was naturally, I guess, okay with it. They invited me out, says, you want to play Frisbee golf? And I said, what is that? And they tried to describe it. And they said, okay, meet us in front of the Student Union building tomorrow. We threw from the steps across the street. It was an elevated tee pad that we threw across the street to the back door of the amphitheater. That was hole one. And so I showed up. It was pouring down rain, and played my first round in the rain with Tom and Ken Westerfield.
Wow.
And that moment changed my life.
That's pretty amazing.
So Tom was a student there, but what was Ken? Was Ken just on the tour?
Yeah,
promoting
he was just
Frisbee?
touring around doing shows, and was in Florence, Alabama. Tom invited him to come through Florence.
Wow.
And, I mean, what's the luck of that?
I know. What I love about the disc golf stories is oftentimes it's pure. The trajectories of pure chance, pure luck. There's Tom right there, number 33.
Yeah.
And a good time right now to talk about Tom's going through some tough times. So anyone who's out there watching or listening or that catches up with this afterwards, please keep Tom in your hearts and your thoughts.
Yes, please do.
So was it, I know that at that time, certainly, it was Frisbee golf, but the Frisbee golf was just one component of the Frisbee phenomena. And usually if you'd have tournaments or events, that'd be just one component. Were you doing some of the other disciplines?
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. Every tournament was an overall tournament. And this was in late '74 when I met Tom. And so that year we ran the first Alabama State overall tournament. And I actually won golf in the first Alabama State that I played in. And Tom always kind of ribbed me. Because the next tournament he shot, I set a course record, and he set it again on the next tournament. But Tom started planning the Southeast Nationals when Ed Hedrick started running the North American Series. We ran the Southeast Nationals, which was one of the NAS events in 1976. We had players like Ed Hedrick came, Joe Cahow came, Palmieri came, Joe Cahow, Dave Marini, all the superstars in Frisbee sports came to Florence, Alabama, from all over the United States. I think a few from Japan, one or two from Canada. And we held the first round. After the first round of golf, we were playing, throwing at light poles, trash cans, etc. And we were sitting on the hillside there in front of the student union. And I remember I had a girl in my group, and she was good. And I was looking down at had a yellow 1976 disc, and I said, "What'd you say your name was again?" She said, "Joe Cahow." And I looked at my Frisbee, and it had her name on it. I said, "Oh, no wonder you're good." So, but in that conversation, I've got that disc hanging on the wall here still. But in that conversation, Ed started talking about his target. He said, "Boys," he said, "next year you won't have to throw at light poles and trash cans. I've got something that'll catch your Frisbees." And I was going, "Chains? What in the world do you talk about, Ed?" And so, he invented the target, which later he gave me his prototype target, but that really changed the game and started turning it into a legitimized sport.
Well, that 1976 was a big year. That's the year that you meet Ed Hedrick. That's obviously the bicentennial year.
Right.
Everybody's in a ferment out there. That's also the year that you team up with Tom to design the course. I believe it was the one at University of Alabama. Is that right? Or
no, at University of Alabama, Huntsville, we did a course there, but Ed, the city of Huntsville, brought Ed into town to put Bronze Springs in.
That's what it is.
Which, the best that we can determine, Bronze Springs was the 7th course in the world, and then his son Ken came in the next year in 77 to install Redstone Arsenal. Redstone Arsenal was the 9th course, but it was only a 9-hole at that time. But UAH, when we first put UAH in, we used 25-gallon oil drums and cut a U in the front of it and hung carpet in it. And then we changed that out for the concrete culverts with a cedar post in the middle. PGA Worlds.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yep. We had 2 courses on campus then. The southern course was the Whammo traveling course, and we installed that, and then had the culvert course on North Campus. We played Redstone Arsenal and Bronze Springs in the 1983 Worlds. We wanted to run the first Worlds, but Ed wouldn't let us do it.
Okay.
Whatever happened to that Whammo traveling course?
We kept it here. It was like its home for years, and people, when they wanted to use it, they would bring a truck, take the targets, run the tournament, and then bring it back to Huntsville. I don't know.
I played on those a couple of different places, and I think one of them might have been a world championship or two, like on the temporary course or something back in the mid 90s, I guess.
Yeah,
but
we
I remember
modified them at that time to make the portable sleeves. I think we were the first to do that to the targets, and then of course everybody started making sleeves to go on the ground because it was so difficult to dig up the chunks of concrete.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
Just before we leave 1976, one of the things I wanted to ask you, considering obviously you fell in love with this Frisbee golf, right at the very beginning, but considering the overall events, was there another event that you really loved and that you were pretty good at? I know that there's MTA, there's accuracy, there's distance, there's freestyle, double disc court.
I was pretty good, not to brag, I was pretty good at all of them, and we worked pretty hard at that. One of the things that was one of the hardest things I've ever done was to earn a world-class Frisbee master certificate.
I wanted to ask you about that.
Oh my God.
Go ahead and spill the beans. Let's hear this one.
Many people tried, and that day you had to throw back-to-back 9.5 second MTAs, and then I forget what the TRC was, and then you had to hit distance upwind and downwind. Those were all difficult, and the shots were difficult, but nothing like that. The MTA is what killed so many people. If you didn't get back-to-back 9.5s pretty quickly, you might as well quit because you were dying. It was in the heat and the humidity here in the summer. Tom was the first to pass it in Alabama, and I think the only ones to pass it in Alabama were Tom Monroe, Bruce Willis, Joe Thacker, and myself. and it was just hard as it could be. But no, I loved MTA. Self-caught flight was a lot of fun. And of course, if you're throwing that, you got to learn from the best. And that was Tom Monroe at the time. He had the Guinness World Record in TRC, and we would play all the time. And we'd play disc golf. We'd throw distance. We'd throw MTA. I mean, it was something that we just did routinely.
What's the age difference between you and Tom?
Oh, probably about 8 years, I think. 7 or 8
Older
years.
than you or younger than you?
Tom's older. Yeah. I'm 69. February's my birthday. Be 70 here in a few months.
You know, before we get on to the Whammo tournament, one thing which is I was a little ticked in the back of my mind, and it's something that I thought of because I started playing in '93 and I was used to the name-based age divisions. It seems to me like a little magic has gone out of the whole age classifications, MP40, MP50, MP60.
Yeah.
You are on the poise to enter into your Legends era starting in February. Right now, you'd be a senior grandmaster. That sounds so much cooler than just MP60 plus. What about you? What's your thoughts on that?
I think it's watered down too much, honestly. Nowadays, if I were to go to Worlds, I do want to go to Worlds again. I would play my age division at a Worlds. The tournaments I play in, I still play open. I mean, I'm certainly not going to win. Occasionally, I can have some pretty good rounds, but again, it's part of how I stay relevant to the game. You know, I want to listen to these guys. I want to watch them how they're playing, and so it's a lot of fun to get to meet some of the younger up and coming players. And if I were to play my age division, I mean, no slight toward anybody that is, but usually they've only got 2 or 3 people in the group. And so I go through a whole tournament and not to get to meet many people and not to get to watch that much golf, as far as diversity and skills. So generally I just play open, but I think it's too watered down. I think it's also this of event where there's so much pressure on them to run a division with 2 people or 3 people. I don't know. If I was a tournament director still nowadays, I wouldn't want to do it.
Well, there's a lot of people that look at that differently, and they just look at that. Okay, well, I got to win,
I know.
And it's just like, but man, like I feel the same way. I feel the same way about that as I do about tee times. Like tee times has got to be one of the most antisocial things to ever hit disc golf. I understand the reason behind it and the need behind it, but man, it sure takes the opportunity out of having fun as a group, of getting to play with a few different people at an event as opposed to the same 8.
We lost that family feel. You go to a tournament nowadays. Yeah. And, if you go, I mean, I love the USDGC. It's my favorite place on earth, my favorite tournament to go to. I think it's the best one ever. But when you go to it, you don't hardly see the players. You don't get to socialize with them. They're on the course and off the course. I guess there's a lot of celebrity to them nowadays. But they're almost, I hate to say it, but they're almost unapproachable.
To some degree, you're right.
Running tournaments where we had all divisions, both the worlds that we ran here, they were overall worlds, for everybody, not just pro worlds. And I mean, when we started breaking it up, that's when I pretty much quit going to worlds, because it's just simply not as much fun. And it's not, I mean, the atmosphere is completely different. I hate the way that we've gone to, not playing the course diversity and not playing the number of rounds in the worlds. I mean, it's just another pro tour event. And other than that, it's nothing special.
There's something to that. I think that some people might argue about the fact that, well, it's going to be at Smuggler's Notch this year and so on and so forth. But at the same time, man, I went and spent the first 2 days. I was there on the players meeting, and then also the first day of play / banquet. And I really had a great time at Masters Worlds. And I've been wanting to do that since they started splitting it up, just because I'm going to know more people there than I'm going to know at Pro Worlds, and,
it's like
and so
reunion. Yeah.
I would encourage you to try to hit one of those, just because, you're not gonna be alone there. There's the whole family thing is going on still there.
Yeah.
It's definitely more social than antisocial at the Masters World Championship. I had a really good time. I was disappointed that I had to leave the next day, but I also had some really cool stuff going on that trip elsewhere after that too. So,
well, I'll be back. I plan on. I'll get my shoulder fixed, and there's no way I'm going to quit playing. I mean, I still like to compete. I want to compete.
All right. Well, so
speaking of competing,
let's throw this one up there. In 1979, the PDGA and Whammo put on a 50K tournament. You have that 580 number, and according to B's research, this was the reason for that number. And plus, you confirmed that earlier today, right? Was that for the Whammo, or was that for the other one? That was the Huntington Beach one.
The $50,000 tournament. Tom qualified here, I qualified here, and Bill Burns qualified here. So immediately, Bill and I had to join, and I was PDJ 580, and Bill is PDJ 581.
Interesting.
There you go.
Yeah, Bill doesn't live far away. I don't see him very often, but he did just get into the Hall of Fame earlier this year, too.
So happy for him. I think it was way past due. If people knew more about Bill's history, he was a great player, number one, but he did so much for the PDJ and so much for the sport off the course. And at one time, in my opinion, he was very instrumental in almost, you could call it, salvaging the PDGA.
Oh, yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that. And in all honesty, he doesn't live very far away, but I haven't had a lot of interactions with him. You know, I mean, obviously it's like what you were saying earlier when we were just talking between the three of us. People move on, life happens. They find activities that
he still plays.
Well, I know he still plays, but he lives near me, but near me's not that near me. You know, I mean, it's 40 minutes one way.
Yeah.
To go that way, and then there's also I've participated in this too. I'll take credit or discredit, whatever you want to call it, but there's kind of been a whole division of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. The East Side plays a lot of birdie contests in the past. Now, it's not as much that way now, but as sport was developing in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and especially like my experience here, was that the East Side was a whole lot more of a birdie contest type of golf, that was preferred over there. On the West Side, it was a lot more tougher meat and potatoes kind of, and honestly, I've come to realize in the last 2 or 3 years that neither one of them, I always felt that we were right and they were wrong, but I think we were both wrong. I think that, they definitely need more distance over there, but we need more birdie contests over here. We need more places for, like you said, if it needs to be a beginner course, then it needs to be a beginner course. And because, we don't have a lot of that here in the DFW area, unfortunately. On the west side of the DFW area, not near as much as we need. So that's, that's one thing that's definitely going to come. So the 580, your first recorded event, according to B's research and what was available, was that Whammo 50K, but you've already told us that that's not the case 100%.
No, I had tons of events before that.
Right.
It's just one of the first thing we found in history.
Yeah.
We just didn't we didn't get your spreadsheet. We should have done that first.
But we know that it was a qualifying event to get into the 50,000, and you said that you qualified here. What was that qualifying event?
It was at Bronze Springs Park.
Okay.
Yeah. And no, we held tournaments all the time, here in Bronze Springs, Redstone Arsenal. We were hosting probably 4, 5, 6 tournaments a year just right here in Huntsville. And at the rate that courses were going in between here and Nashville and other areas in Tennessee, Cedars of Lebanon, down toward, Birmingham, we had courses all over the place. And so we and Tom were constantly running events. The way to find out what those events were, and I think maybe if the PDJ would go back and get Tom's South Selling Circular that he was putting out just about since day one, All of those events are documented. And again, some of them were just golf. A whole lot of them had multiple events, at least golf and distance or golf MTA distance and accuracy.
Interesting.
The PDJ definitely could hire somebody to comb through all the archives if they want to, in the name of archival perfection and keeping true to posterity, because a lot of older players whose record goes back, either the PDJ record doesn't have the record of those events or they don't show any money win. So people who've been playing for a lot longer, when you look at their career earnings, it's going to be skewed because the records aren't that great.
Well, we got, actually, in my opinion, we've got issues at both ends, for Hall of Fame members in particular. A lot of their early accomplishments are not documented. And then since they were inducted into the Hall of Fame, some of them now for decades, those events are not documented. But we're working on changing that. And we got some pretty good things coming here in the next few years that I really can't announce or say anything about right now, but I think we'll correct that issue. We will correct that issue.
Spoiler alert right there.
Well, so in this WAMO event, so it was the 50K, the WAMO 50K Frisbee Disc Golf Invitational at Huntington Beach, and there were 70 players in MPO. You took 30th and got $420. The first place, Tom Kennedy, took $10K.
Yeah, that kind of ticked off a lot of golfers because Tom Kennedy was an ultimate player, and he comes in and beats our butts. So he took home a whole lot more than $10,000. Ed gave him a box truck load of disc of Midnight Flyers.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It was cool. It was a great event. A lot of fun out there. I guess one of my best memories is Greenwell finished right behind me, and I'm not sure he cashed.
There's a
so
great
is that
photo.
The kind of relationship you have with Dave?
We got a great relationship.
Well, I know that, but I mean, like, do you guys keep track of, and like pick at each other a little bit like brothers?
Yeah, we do. And real quick one on Dave. For years, I worked at a company here in town, had a pretty large organization. I was adamant that I'd do my own recruiting. And so I'd schedule recruiting around the country. I try to go to an area where there's going to be a disc golf tournament that weekend. And so one year is actually also 1985. I went up to Louisville, Kentucky, and played in their big event. We played at Iroquois Park, upper and lower at Iroquois Park. And so I would schedule all of my recruiting in the morning. And so by lunch, I go eat lunch, and I had the whole afternoon to go out and practice the courses. Well, it was a pretty big tournament. I don't know how many people were there, but it was in that day, a big event. And so I won that tournament in Greenwell's hometown on his home courses by 10 strokes. So, that was fun.
That's really sweet for sure. Now, speaking of Greenwell, definitely a noted competitor, and I've got a photo I'm going to share here in a second, but we skip ahead to the 83 Worlds. This is your first, you're the assistant TD. Tom is the TD for the 83 Worlds.
Yeah.
You both end up playing, which is,
I don't know how you pull that off.
To a lot of people. And not only that, but Tom took second in the men's division, 120 players, and you tied for sixth with Donna Pace and Greenwell.
Well, there was a 5-way playoff in that, and I know Dave Dunapace was in that. I think Jeff Homburg and Greenwell were in that playoff. But the other thing that you didn't note was Tom Monroe also won Masters. He played in both Open and Masters during that World.
I was going to get to that. I don't know if you can see this picture here. This is from the 83 Worlds. Obviously, the clothing requirements are a little less.
I'm surprised. I'm surprised I had a shirt on. Most of the pictures of me playing in the finals in the 83 Worlds were without shirts.
And so they were there. We see Greenwell here with the aviator shades.
Yeah.
There's Dave Dunapace holding, and this is one thing we want to get to in a second here, but that's one of his prototype or one of the first run Eagles at the time. But look at this cast of characters. I wonder how many people can just start naming some of those names just from the faces alone.
Well, The one on the right with the gold frisbee's Jeff Watson, right?
In the middle of it is Jeff Watson. To the right of him is Lou Satterfield.
What? Wow.
Yeah. And
Lou was around here. Lou lived out his life just down in Athens.
He was from Oklahoma. Yeah. Wasn't he from Oklahoma or Texas?
I don't know where he was from originally, but in the end, he lived out his, last several years in Athens, Texas, just a little southeast of here.
To the left of Tom is Tom Krashna, who still lives in Huntsville. I played a tournament a month or two ago with one of his boys, who is a fantastic player. He's a scholarship soccer player up in, I forget, the William and Mary College, I believe it is. And behind him is Joe Thacker. He was one of our locals.
This guy right here?
Yeah. And is that Dunapace on the left?
There's Dunapace there.
And then to the right side of that's Steve Slazer right there where your arrow is.
Okay.
PDGA 055. And Sonny Culberson, I believe, to the right of Greenwell.
There's Sonny. Okay.
So
that's a heck of wander down the memory lane there.
Yeah. And that information board was the first time we had an information board that I handmade in my driveway. So.
Wow.
Nice.
Now, one of the things that I did pay a point attention to about Dave Dunapace holding that, obviously 83 was we're 40 years now on, both from the Huntsville Worlds, the Rocket City Chain Gang, and the invention of the Beveled Edge. But it was there specifically, and this is what stood out in the research, and the PDGA is really great for having articles on their website about stuff like this. But it was at that Worlds where with the definitive answer of what kind of disc could be used, because Ed, God rest his soul, apparently was a bit of a control freak, and he didn't want the new popular Super Puppies or this new Beveled Edge disc to be allowed to play. And you and Tom, as the TD, you put your foot down. Maybe you want to finish about the story with that.
Both Tom and I we loved Ed and got along well with him, but both of us had a degree of stubbornness. And I was battling Ed on the weights, and so was Tom. But Ed I was the first technical standards guy for the PDGA because I was always battling him. I said, Ed, don't put restriction on the disc. Let's see where this thing can go. We were always asking him to, we first asked him to take the flight rings off, make them heavier, make them, smoother, and make them beveled edge. But of course, he never would do the beveled edge until Dunapace and Nineveh did, or Champion Disc at that time did. But we said we're going to let other discs be played with in this tournament. He didn't like it, and at the same time, we were battling him. Said, Ed, you can't own the PDGA. You own the DGA. It's got to be a players organization. And he was stubborn, but I think he was trying to do it in the right way, and he wanted it to be done in the right way. And he just had a hard time trusting people to also do things right. I think we showed him that we could run it. It didn't have to be everything to his standards or to his specs. And we ran a great event here in 83, sort of set the standard in those days for how Worlds would be run. And he was very happy with it.
I think it's amazing that the first non-California major tournament, obviously the Worlds, happens there where you and Tom happen to be. This isn't just this. It's got the overtones of the cries of destiny to it all, for sure. That the Huntsville was destined to be put on the map for many reasons, but obviously for your two efforts there. And just while we're talking about Huntsville, you've got the picture over your back shoulder there that people can see. You did this. You came up with the target. You call it the rocket target. It's from the nose cone and tail cone or tail section of the Little John Missile Development Program there in Rocket City, Huntsville, Alabama. One of the great things about incorporating local specificities is something exactly like that. Is that one of the most photographed baskets in the South?
Well, it probably is. Most people that come, they with it. If they get them in the distance, they can see the Saturn V standing 365 feet tall at the Space and Rocket Center. Wow. It was Honest John nose cones. It's what this rocket's made out of. Actually, it was two nose cones. I cut one of them off and inverted it to give it that retro rocket shape on the bottom there. Okay. Then I had the fins made, and of course, put the elevated basket in. So
that's pretty cool.
And that is located at the buildings, the Von Braun building on campus, where Werner von Braun actually had an office in that building back in the 60s.
Wow. If only he could have seen what his rocket inventions turned out to be.
Yeah.
So is that, did you get to the end of that? I guess you did. I see.
Yeah.
All right. I'm sorry. I'm a little behind here. All right. So the next thing we're going to do is jump over the ocean. And when I was graduating high school, you were going over to Helsingborg and the 1985 WIFDIF Worlds, which is, I don't know, it's kind of hard for me to wrap my head around going around the world for Frisbee back then. Because, I mean, what was that like?
Oh, it was pretty awesome. I was the U.S. team captain. I think we had 20 or 21 members of the U.S. team that we took to that, and a number of Canadians went with us as well. Man alive, they treated us like kings over there. They put us up in a brand new hotel. They fed us daily, took us out on dinner cruises. It was a lot of fun. The courses were great. They were really long. In that day, we still had a lot of links type holes, even in that early day. We played around a 700-year-old castle on the grounds of that castle in Helsingborg. And it was just a great trip, a lot of good times. The hardest thing about that tournament, I think Scott Stokely was still 15 years old, and I was chartered to be his chaperone, which that was kind of a nightmare. But he played well. Sam Ferrins, the year before, I remember nobody knew who Sammy was. And at the Rochester Worlds in 84, Palmieri came up to me and said, "Lavone, we got this kid flying in who can't drive. Can you go to the airport and pick him up?" And so I did. And it was Sam who ended up winning. We say, my gosh, a kid that can't even drive comes in here and wins the Worlds. But we know Sam's legacy as well. Oh, yeah. Sam owes me some AVRs, because at the dinner cruise, he was trying to throw my AVRs out of my bag over to another ship. Of course, they all went in the ocean. And so I had to borrow putters for the rest of that tournament.
Well, we'll have him on in a few weeks. We'll mention the debt.
Yeah, tell him to send me some putters.
All right. We'll definitely pass that one along, without a doubt. So so in 84, I guess you're opening up your travel experiences and you're seeing the top players in North America. Was it tempting? Was that what kind of led you to go over there? Or was it just that was the event and everybody was doing it?
Oh, you had to go. That was the year we considered that a world championship. So we had two worlds. We had the Rochester Worlds and the Helsingborg. But the Swedish Worlds, I think that was 85 though, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. We had the Tulsa in the Swedish Worlds.
But it was more the idea of, I think, that trip to Rochester in 84, that was your first kind of really big, other than the California venture, that was your first venture to another part of the country, fairly large trip. And that's where you first meet Sam, and you get to see who's this golden boy that they're starting to talk about. And this is obviously before social media, before really any kind of rapid dissemination of news and video. So
yeah,
you got that sense of who he was. Knowing, as you're the team captain getting ready for Helsingborg, did you think Sam could be the inside favorite on this one?
Yeah, we thought that, because he had played so well the year before. But I mean, we had some players on our team that went, and we were pretty familiar. Everybody, I would say, was familiar with each other and knew each other. We had run across each other in the country. We traveled probably a little bit more than what was evident, because again, a lot of those tournaments they're not on the PDGA records.
Right.
And
It's a shame,
because we had a pretty good reputation already of running large events since 77, 78. Even Huntsville was coming up, I think, when he was 15 or 16 years old. He was coming up to Huntsville to play in our NAS tournaments. And so people were traveling pretty heavily and consistently to even come to Huntsville.
right?
That's
Wow.
pretty interesting. That's amazing. So are you and Hosfeld similar age?
I think I'm probably 3 or 4 years older than he is.
Oh, okay.
A few years older, yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna have to get him on too.
But this is a good segue transition, because the next topic I want to talk to you about, especially because Mace is in Dallas, or Arlington. I'm in Toronto here, and we do have some of the people who do drop by and watch the show. They're either from Toronto or they know Toronto. So I just want to set this up for a second. In 1986, you play 6 events, all of them top 10s. You win 2. You have 1 second. You enter into 1987. You're playing hot, nothing worse than a 7th place. You've got 4 events and 5 wins leading up to your trip to Canada. Now, what kind of, and I know you played 2 events in Canada. You played the Canadian Championships at Etobicoke and then the Island Tournament. They were put right back to each other. But talk to us about you're going to Canada now for the first time. You've met Canadians before. You played against Canadians, but now you're going to where Westerveld. I mean, this is Westerveld. He was the TD for this,
right?
And Sully was the golden boy there. So talk to us about your experiences.
Well, the first experience at Etobicoke, oh my gosh, I'll never forget that. We were the winds were probably 50, 60 miles an hour. It was absolutely incredible, and it's right underneath the runway. I guess was right beside us. So the airplanes coming in there, and I know one round I was playing with Greenwell. He threw a shot and it went up in the air and ended up about 300 feet behind us. I mean, it's the craziest wind to this day that ever played in. But it was fun. Going out to the island every day was an experience. We stayed in a dorm that had no hot running water. So we had to take a cold shower.
Oh, we didn't hear the water part.
Yeah, it was cold water every morning. We had to walk about 2 or 3 blocks to catch a bus, and it took the bus to the train, and the train to the ferry. If you didn't make that ferry in time, you were going to be in trouble. And then once you got to the island, good gosh, I don't remember exactly. It's probably a half a mile to 3/4 of a mile walk to the course. And
Same day.
Every day it was an adventure. But that was the first time that anybody that we'd ever seen made a cart and had a cart for disc golf. And that was Tom Monroe. So Tom Monroe had the first Frisbee cart, disc cart, that he pulled around on the course. And the funny thing is he tied a mini to it, and he just let the mini drag along and picked the string up and placed the mini and just took off so he didn't have to pick up his mini. But but you know what? It was a beautiful course. I remember that the chains were rusty because it's right there on the salt water, and they had the heaviest chains I ever putted against. Yep. Another favorite memory, there was one telephone on the island, and it was out real close to, they had this platform, really nice thing at headquarters. And I was sitting there watching in front of that platform where they did the ceremonies, was a guy putting. And I was talking to my wife, and I said, I got to go, because I was watching this guy. I mean, he was just drilling and nailing putt after putt after putt. And I wanted to know, who is this guy that putts like this? And so went over, and that's the first time that I met Bob Vanderboss.
Oh, Bob V.
So nice. Watching Huntsville play, I mean, it was a fun week. I mean, it was a lot of fun. Another memory from that, we stayed in the hotel downtown for that 87 Worlds for the last night. And Westerveld came through and said, I've got boxes of discs, and I don't know what to do, all of them. You want a box of discs? And so Tom and I said, yeah. And so we went up to the room and opened up the room. The window opened horizontally, and we started launching disc out the 4th floor window. And there were people running all over the street picking. I bet we threw the whole dang box because we couldn't take them back on the airplane. I've got one. I see one on the wall over here from that Worlds, but the rest of them hit the street.
That's hilarious.
That's funny.
Yeah.
You know, that was. Well, I haven't combed through all of the World's results, but certainly that 4-hole playoff was one of the more dramatic of the sudden death playoffs. Here is this, and I had, in my mind, I know Hosfeld, I met him when he was later in life, so I always remember when I think about him at that time, I think about him as he is relatively now. Imagine him as a 16-year-old, 18-year-old, a bit of a young, scrawny guy. He's going up again. What are you thinking when you're watching this? Are you like, was it just some of the peak golf that you've seen in a while?
He just played great golf, and he started doing that week, doing that walking putt, and he was just drilling putts He was using shuttle puppies, and for years I would keep him stocked with shuttle puppies. That's what he used. Another little story, one day opened the mail and there was a shuttle puppy in the mail, and he was sending it. He said, and it had a note in it, which I've got. He said, I'm returning it to its home. And he and Jeff Watson and Climo, all 3 world champions from Florida, signed it and sent it back to me.
Wow.
So that was
nice.
Nice.
Yeah.
Man, I haven't run into Jeff Watson in a long, long time, but that guy was awesome. He was
He was.
You know, I don't know whatever. Hopefully he's still around and doing well. I have to ask around.
I think he is. I want to say he's involved in real estate. I believe his brother was in real estate, and another guy that was very instrumental. He didn't play much golf, but he was overall player. Blue, his name was Blue Rock. I think he was from the Sarasota area. Probably Tim Willis. They could tell you about him.
Yeah, that's right. I should ask Tim this year in October. Hopefully.
Yeah.
Tim almost didn't make it last year because of car troubles, but he had a couple of miracles come his way, which is pretty neat. A couple of people helped him out. I don't remember the whole details to the story, but that was a pretty good story.
So just before we leave Toronto here, just 2 quick little details. One is the Etobicoke tournament that I remember seeing footage from that Etobicoke tournament. Rob Laurie was one of the guys who was helping organize the tournament, and I think he was tasked with around the ponds. He was one of the guys to help fish out the discs that would go in. But that was one of the early examples of TSN being on site doing color commentary, and we had the great Canadian Gino Retta doing play-by-play coverage. So that was like, I don't know if anybody can troll through the internet to find, scrubbed versions of that, or if you have any of that.
Didn't know that. I've never seen that.
Okay. Well, if Rob Laurie, hopefully he still has that. And finally, just last little thing I want to say, you're the guy you were chaperoning 2 years before. You end up tying Scott Stokely for 20th at those 87 Worlds.
I did?
Yeah.
Oh.
According to the PDGA.
Okay. I didn't remember that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, Gino Rada still does a lot of hockey stuff, doesn't he? Or is he retired?
I don't know if he's retired. I think he's more like higher management style. I don't think he gets in front of the camera too often.
Just gets the big paychecks and tells everybody what to do. So 2 years later, I imagine this wasn't quite the insanity, but maybe it was, that it is now. But 2 years later, you decided to run Worlds again. After doing it the first time, then you do it again.
Well, again, it was one of the most rewarding things I'd ever been involved in. And the 93 Worlds was the same thing. It was much harder. I started out thinking I was going to also play in that one. At 4 o'clock in the morning, I changed my mind and didn't run it and play in it.
I bet that was probably one thing you were really happy about all week after you made that decision finally.
Well, it was a hard week. It was, again, extremely, I don't remember how much weight I lost. It was all water weight. It's like something like 18 pounds. It was just crazy. Even running the Worlds as a director, I was the one that got up every morning and went to the ice plant and got ice and filled up the jugs with ice and water and took them out to the locations on the courses. But everybody here was just working really hard, for that Worlds, but it was fun. I think it was, there's some pretty good video of that. It's the first time that we tried to show a real video production, and Terry Roddy came, helicopter, things that we'd never done before. I'd constructed scaffolding around campus at UAH so they could get some elevated shots and got them in position so they could get on top of some of the buildings for, elevated shots. We didn't know, some of it worked, some of it didn't work. We didn't know. We were just trying to learn, and how can we show this sport? To me, that's still important that we show the sport, and, the guys nowadays doing production, they're doing a fantastic job. I'll put a little plug in here that's a personal gripe. I think it's a mistake to try to show Pro Tour Championship in the woods. I have so many people that don't know a lot about golf that are friends of mine, and they'll watch it because they know that it's important to me. And they say, hey, but they're just kind of throwing Frisbees in the woods. They don't get a real good understanding. I think we're missing a good marketing opportunity by not showing it on a more open course, for an event that's going to be shown nationally.
Good points. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that makes total sense.
And because of that, the pro tour level type courses that I'm getting opportunity to design right now, I'm planning for crowd control. I'm planning for, for camera visibility and views and the vistas. Doing that, that's a main part of what I do when I'm designing those courses.
That's awesome to think, because we need to be able to scale up as well with the growth of the game. And if you build it visionary, it's going to be able to sustain the growth for a long time. One of the things I started playing, I played my first ever tournament in, I think it was early June of '93. It was on the Toronto Island, and in my group was Elaine King. And I remember I remember Honegger was reading out the names, and she is already at that point the two-time world champ. She was hoping to go down to Huntsville for the three-peat. And I remember thinking to myself, I got to play with a girl. What is this? And it's after the first drive, I was like, whoa, who is this?
Yeah.
But she ended up going down to Huntsville and winning her third in a row there. And that's when we talk about some of the really great players you've been able to play with, but also run events for some of the greatest players out there. And one of the other people, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of stepping on Mace's turf here.
No, it's quite all right. I was disappearing in the darkness and I had to fix that.
Dean Tannick, he's I met him. You and the three of us played around together at Redstone. He seemed to me at the time to be kind of like your protege. And
he was. I think I sold Dean or gave him his first golf disc, and he caught fire with it immediately. I mean, he was a great athlete, played primarily a soccer player growing up, but he was a competitor. And so actually I hired him at Intergraph where I was working in those days, and we became good friends, kept playing golf, and his ambition was to beat me. And the day that he was smiling ear to ear, the first time that he beat me, and I was smiling ear to ear because I was so happy for him. But to watch him play and compete, I remember we both went to Cincinnati in '88. The opening round in Cincinnati in '88 is on a really, I can't think of the name of it right now. It's a really tight course. And after the first round, Dean was leading worlds. And I ended up doing pretty good. And Dean was following me around in the final group, taking pictures and smiling ear to ear. And I was just watching him smiling at me. I mean, it was just a lot of fun. Dean is one of our better, greater personalities in the sport. And he was a top competitor. He showed out several times, getting top 10 finishes at the USDGC. He's now won, world championship, and finally to see him being inducted in the Disc Golf Hall of Fame just made my heart swell up. People don't know the work behind the scenes that Dean has done for the sport. I mean, it's one thing for the accomplishments on the course, but the things that he's done for the sport off the course and just busting his rear end on our courses here. And he's been amazing. He's a great friend.
Well, you must have been really proud, because Climo at that point had already won 3 worlds. He was obviously the new, walking god on the course. Yeah. And so for anyone to get close and hang with him and maybe even throw some shots that would perturb Climo's legendary calm demeanor.
He took him to the wire, and Dean, he had a shot on what is now hole 15 there on UAH. When he ran around the corner, he went out of bounds, and I think that's what got him. He might pressure on Kenny. Kenny being the competitor that he is or was. I mean, he never let up, and it was just fun to watch Dean and Crazy John and Kenny showing out before the crowd. It was good times.
Yeah,
throwing whippets 500 feet plus. That was kind of cool.
That's pretty mind-boggling. I'm going to need you to forward his phone number to me, by the way, because we want to have him on as well, without a doubt.
I'll do that.
But yeah, that had to have been really rewarding, just to to watch a local guy just like see what all he put into it, and then see what he got back, and just to fall short. It's unfortunate, but that's still a huge showing. I mean, against our Michael Jordan,
Yeah. Well, Dean finally went out on the roads. He was one of the first, full-time touring pros that we had too. He quit his job working for us at Intergraph and went out full time. And we've had, I've tried to keep records of the Rocket City Chain Gang. I don't have it before me, but I think we've had 7 or 8 different Rocket City Chain Gangers have top 10 finishes in the world.
Wow.
And so that's a pretty good legacy that we've got here, and 3 with world championships and 3 that are in the Disc Golf Hall of Fame. So Huntsville has always been a pretty good, I guess, hotbed for disc golf, and a good place for a person to learn and groom their skills to compete. I'm working with a guy right now. His name is Jordan. Nickname is Rockets. Is Jordan Rocket Henshaw. I hope within just a short period of time, people are going to be hearing and seeing what Jordan can do with the disc.
All right, you heard it here first.
Yep.
Keep your eye over Jordan. Now, speaking of, again, another great segue, talk about the Hall of Fame. You are credited with founding it, but did you worked with other people in the concept of founding the Disc Golf Hall of Fame?
Well, it was my idea to do it, that in the Hedrick Museum. But yeah, of course, you got to have. I went out and got as many legends and people with a legacy as possible to give it credibility. And they wanted to actually put me in the first year. I said, that's crazy. There's no way I'm going to do that. But I just did not want the people to be forgotten. Yeah. And we were already having a couple that had passed away, and people that had quit the sport, quit playing because they could no longer travel, could no longer compete. And it was just, I just knew that it was going to be important to preserve our history. And so I've always tried to be one of those that kept up with things, to be able to pass those stories down. And I've got a jillion stories. One day, if I could ever have time, I would like to write a book. But yeah, Tom and a number of others, came on board, and I passed the torch to Speedy. Al Guerrero did it for a while, and now you got Andy Lehman Young there in Houston that's doing a great job for it, and she's taken us already to another level of really what I had envisioned.
Well, I made arrangements, and we haven't publicized this, but it's not like it's a secret, but we're going to have George Sappenfield and Michael Snap Conger on.
Yeah.
And wait till you hear Michael's, I could have had this number is PDJ number story is really, really, really similar to yours.
Yeah. I mean, Michael was, he was extremely instrumental. He was like, I was just looking up to what he was doing with the Riders of the Wind. And I thought I got my Riders of the Wind certificate. I'm number 12 on that. And that was really important to me. And just with Captain Snap was a god. He was a disc god in those days, just like Tom Monroe was. I was just fortunate to be around Tom Monroe every day.
Right on.
I didn't get to see Captain Snap every day. So it's pretty awesome. And his involvement, he's more behind the scenes, but the things he does, he keeps us going in the Disc Golf Hall of Fame. And it's a lot of work.
Well, it's really cool to see that that there's 3 people that are working on this all the time, and that's one of the things that one of the groups of people that we see every year in Rock Hill now too. And they're I believe the inductions, the announcements, we were in Flagstaff, but the inductions are taking place in Rock Hill, if I'm not mistaken. So that's really cool too.
Right.
So that first class, 1993, 7 people in it, was there a deliberate idea in your mind to have 7 in the first class, or was it just these are the best 7 that we could think of?
I think that the group of us, we just decided let's go with 7. And honestly, I don't remember all of those conversations. We probably could have put 15 in there, but that's 7 was kind of pushing it. And obviously, we want it to be an exclusive class, exclusive deal. It seems like though every year we feel like we're still playing catch up, because there's people that names come up, and I keep a list of names, looking at 2 that I found in my notes right now, and it's probably always going to be that way. You think, okay, God, why isn't this person in the Disc Golf Hall of Fame? I probably shouldn't do this, but I do a lot of, I'm very blunt. I mean, that's, to me right now, you look at it's kind of like people look at Pete Rose. How is he not in the Hall of Fame? Yeah, I know the cheating story and all that kind of stuff. But personally, how the heck is Dave Elberg not in the Hall of Fame? I probably shouldn't be saying this as a board member, but what the heck? I mean, but that's how I feel. We've always got people out there.
Yeah.
You got, I can sit here and just name off a bunch of people that, and your players out there, they think Paul Macbeth should. Well, he's not within the parameters in the hall that what the board is set. But I mean, but they will be if they will be patient.
For sure.
They won't be forgotten.
Yeah.
And I know you have there's so many young players now that's been playing for 1, 2, 3 years, and they get on the internet and they bashing us and the Hall of Fame has lost their credibility, don't have any credibility. They don't understand it's not a political thing. Everybody gets one vote and you vote. And it's just how it comes up. And so we can't control that. It is not political. We work hard. We work hard at even getting their nomination papers in. And there's a lot of background, a lot of research that goes into it. But there's been so many people that have done things on and off the course. And I had this conversation the other day with a fellow. Will it change in the years to come? I think that it will, because nowadays it'll be more focused, just like other sports have been. It'll be more focused on their actions on the course. I hope we never lose that, showing the behind the scenes person, because they are just as important. And we wouldn't be where we are if we didn't have those that were the grassroots foundation, and now those that are doing the work behind the scenes. They're not great players, never were, never will be, but it wouldn't happen without them. And so
but that's the same as the NHL. They have the Hockey Hall of Fame, and you can go in as a player or as a builder category.
Right.
And it's rare. We talked to a couple of people that so far in our quest with the Good Times Hour to talk to people who are both excellent pros and excellent promoters. Usually people are one or the other. Background or even front of the stage, but still, there's the people who play on the course and scorch that up, and both sets should be equally admired.
I mean, I had my moments and did pretty well in tournaments, but we got so many players, so much quality, so much talent nowadays that you see on the course. I'm gonna be honest with you. I mean, I almost feel guilty at times that why the heck am I in the Hall of Fame when I look around at the skill and the talent that we have today. And that's really, that's one of the things that drives me. So, well, I got to keep working. I got to keep putting more courses in to justify my position in the Hall of Fame. So I feel like I've got to keep working. So,
well, it's nice for you to be humble like that, Lavone. But obviously, you've laid the thing that a lot of people don't take into consideration, and those 1, 2, and 3-year players don't know anything about. And that's one of the primary reasons we're putting these stories out there, and hopefully they stumble onto them at some point and come to realize that that what you're seeing right now isn't all of it. And it's not the end of the story either. It's down the road and way down the road into the middle. Hopefully there's a whole lot more good stuff on the horizon, which I think there is. But, without people like you, we wouldn't be playing, Lavone. So I appreciate that you want to continue to be a workaholic about all this, but you definitely deserve the pat on the back at the same time as well.
Well, it's the memories and the people and the friendships. The competition was great, but there's way more that's meaningful to me today when I look back. And, I'm glad from the early on, when I would win a trophy, I would always make a little note on the back of it. And those are the things that makes me smile, is the memories. Oh, what was it about that tournament? What was different? Who did I get to play with? What did I see? Everything from bounce-in aces to who knows what. But at the end of the day, for me, it's the memories and the friendships. I sent a note to Tom. He had sent me a message earlier today, and I sent a note back to him and just thanking him. If it weren't for him, I wouldn't be sitting where I'm sitting. I wouldn't have the memories. I wouldn't have the joy. I wouldn't have the travel experiences if it weren't for Tom. And so I just thank the Lord every day, for his motivation and his friendship and the opportunity that he gave me and so many others to play this sport.
Well, I think this is a good time, and maybe Mace, you can take over here. But we'll talk about kind of a two-sided aspect here. One is looking at the idea of being a pioneer, and the other is looking at the legacy that you've left behind. And one of the things that you know, is the mantra in disc golf, especially with Steady Ed, was leave it better than you found it. And
Right.
it's 100% certain that you've left it way better than you found it. So, Mace, maybe one.
Well, one of the things that, you know, I've seen this before, and I heard it a long time ago, but I didn't realize it came from you. But you know, you say that your quote is, "I'm blessed to be a thread in the fabric of the disc golf history," and I think you're probably about 7 or 8 threads in that fabric, Lavone, not just one. You know, I mean, then
No.
and you know, but there's thousands of them, you know, and so it's. I'm not trying to give you way too much credit, but I think you deserve quite a bit, you know, and it's, you know, I mean, I look at what I've done in the sport, and I realize that I laid some groundwork, but there would have been nothing for me to even start the groundwork at had there not been folks like you. And
well, you know, that's not true. There have always been somebody else that would have stepped up. And, you know, when people talk about legend and all this kind of stuff, and I'm totally honest, the only reason is I just never quit. You know, anybody can do what I've done. It's just don't quit. Just always be there, be willing to work, be willing to do what's necessary. And
But
so
see, that's the difference. Not everybody's willing to work.
but I challenge all these people that I get to play with and groom or work with, and if I give them something, what goes around, I tell them what goes around comes around. One day you don't quit. One day you're going to have this opportunity, and you're going to have made an impression and a difference in this sport. And so it's not for somebody that started in the groundwork. It's somebody that starts today. They start in their community today. They can do the exact same thing. Just don't quit.
Well, one of my favorite bumper stickers of all time, kind of sums up what you're getting at, and I think it's right in between you and I right now, and it sums up what both of us are getting at, and it's really simple, and it said the biggest, greatest events were made possible by the people that were there at the time, and there's a lot of what you're saying there, but there had to be all different tiers of people in there too, and you know, some people were rowing, and other people were steering the boat, and you know, you've done quite a bit of steering the boat. I know you've done a lot of rowing too, but you know, we definitely really appreciate the things that you've done in the past. And obviously, you know, Tom Monroe was your guide, and this was obviously what you mentioned earlier. This was something from his induction. It said Tom Monroe has rightly been likened to the Johnny Appleseed of disc golf, but you stand up there on the podium as one of the founders of the sport. And I don't think it's a far stretch to say similar things about you, Lavone.
Well, I appreciate that, but you know, I'm just an old has-been. That's what a legend is, right?
No, well, to some degree, but you're a current. You're currently an amazing part of our sport, and it's really. I can't wait to see you in Rock Hill and give you a big old hug.
I appreciate that. I think the world of you too. Paul, you too. I mean, you guys, we got so many people around the country, around the world that are given to the sport on a daily basis. And nowadays, I think so many people are seeing the opportunities that we have, and I think we as a community are motivated more than we've ever been.
Yeah.
And I think there's great reason for that as well. You know, I mean, it's obviously the things we've seen in the last 3 years, but it's also that whole, I mean, it goes all the way back to that whole, I call it the Sweet 16 syndrome, you know, like disc golf is like that first girl you ever kissed. You know, you go and tell your friends about it, and you're like, no, you don't understand. This is the best thing ever. Like, this is even better than kissing that girl at 16. No, trust me. You know me, right? Seriously, you know it. It's gonna be better than everything else, you know. And we all kind of fall into that pit, or fall into that, down that trail, into that trap, whatever. And you know, even the ones that go away, they come back. I mean, I'm an example of that too.
Well, what we're seeing is what I remember having conversations, you know, years ago, decades ago, that, you know, when I say we, in the early days, we were good athletes. but we weren't really the elite athletes that we're starting to see get involved in this sport today.
Yeah.
And the training is different. The discipline is different. The time that they're putting into it. When we were working full time, had families, we couldn't do what they're doing today, but we're seeing the results, and the skill level is incredible.
And one of the things we're seeing, and it's, I mean, we've already had several people on the show that are 40 and they have like 30 plus years of experience as players. And there's a lot of 20-year-olds on the tour right now that have 15, 16 years of experience as well. And their bodies grew up with the game. Their bodies grew up with their game. And, you know what I mean? It's no different than what we've seen for years, for decades in tennis, you know? These kids turn pro as preteens sometimes even, but certainly early teenage years. And they've got a whole career under their belt by the time they're 20, you know? And I don't know that we'll get that deep into it with disc golf right away, but I don't see why. I mean, like, look at Gannon Burr. He's just 18, you know? I mean,
I know.
He's and just, I think, didn't he just get his driver's license, if I'm not mistaken, recently as well?
I don't know about that.
I'm pretty sure that I saw a video of him getting his driver's license, and his caddy was was riding with him or something like that. But it's you know, that's going to become the more, I mean, honestly, we can talk about this too, but I've got this idea, I think that the low masters age should start at 30 and go to 45. But I know there's a lot of people that are 40 to 45 that aren't going to dig that at all. But there's a big group of guys that almost don't have a home right now, and it's not going to get better, you know, in the 30-year-old age range. I mean, they can all win on any given Sunday, but there's a lot of other people that are going to probably beat them to the punch, you know, and it's not going to get less, it's going to get more. So that's just an idea that I had. And, you know, I'll throw that out there every now and then and see what people think about it.
Everybody in every town nowadays has opportunity to get their competition in. I mean, it's one of the most fun things that I get to do now on almost a weekly basis when I'm healthy, is I get to go out and play with my son, my oldest son, Gary. And Gary, he's almost 50, and I think he'll be 49 here in a couple of months, but he's PDJ number 4,000, and we still get to play together, and he still plays really well, and it's fun to compete against him and with him when we get to play doubles. And so you don't have to look far to find somewhere that you can fit in. If it's all about winning, I don't know that it's all about winning. I don't think you have to have an age group for everybody to have an opportunity to win. I just don't know if that's feasible or possible, but you can certainly find a place to compete and have fun.
Yeah, and the fun's the key.
And that's, you know, everybody we've talked to is friendship, fun, fitness, and frisbees. It's the 4Fs. We're the original 4F club.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Lavone, we can't thank you enough for taking this time to sit down and rehash some of the old glories of the past and tell us some great stories. We do have an idea of, you know, over the winter time, we want to do a focus on course designers and talk about the design process and delve deeper into that. And we would love it if you could come back and join us.
I'd love to do that
in early next year. But until then, we just want to wish you the best and continue to do what you do. Continue to work hard. Continue to show up. Continue to smile, and continue to design those courses that are going to keep growing with the growth of the game.
Thank you very much for this opportunity, and I mean, it's always an honor and a pleasure to get to share a little bit of our history, a little bit of a few stories, and thank you very much.
We'll see you in Rock Hill in 2 months.
All right,
you bet.
Roll Tide.
There you go. All right, thanks a
lot, Lavone. We really appreciate it. Definitely. I you know, I feel like I'm saying this too much, but I can't wait to see you in person, man.
See you soon.
All right. Thanks again for joining us.